to talk to you here. Just for a moment. Good morning, boys and girls.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Israel Crane House. This house was built in 1796 when George Washington was in his second term of office. This house wasn't built on this property. It was built about 10 blocks away, and it was rolled up here on rollers. Can you imagine a house being rolled on rollers? About 6 years ago and put here on this property. Israel Crane was 22 when he built this house. On the other outside, he had other buildings too on the original site. He had a buttery. What do you suppose the buttery would be for? Yes?
Maybe work butter and dairy things.
Butter and dairy things, yes. And he also had a smokehouse and probably a spring or a well. And a spring house.
And there's an ice house too.
And an ice house. Good for you. Very good. Mr. Crane also had a cider mill on this property, and he was the sole proprietor and owner of a country store. He also had a mill in Patterson, and he was a very, very well-known man around here because he also started the Pompton-Newark Turnpike, or the toll road. Do you know what the toll road would be today? Yes?
Bloomfield Avenue.
Bloomfield Avenue, that's right. About 5 blocks away from here, there's a stagecoach stop.
I live on Bloomfield Avenue. I live on Clinton.
That's right. Mr. Crane. Mr. Crane was a very well-known man. And did you know, in fact, that we are in Cranetown right now? Yes, Cranetown was the name of Montclair a few hundred years ago. Would you like to come on into the kitchen? And we'll sit down and talk about some of the wonderful things in the Crane House kitchen.
This is
You can go to the family.
Good afternoon, boys and girls. I wonder if you remember that 5 children really lived in this house. There were 3 girls and 2 boys. There was Elizabeth and Abigail, Matthias, Mary, and James. I wonder if you could tell me, why do you think they like to come to this room? Yes, Peggy?
Because it's so warm.
Very warm and cozy. And Christopher, what other reason?
Because this is where they ate dinner and they like to smell the food.
Oh, they love the smell of the food. Oh, their appetites were really piqued. And yes, Melissa?
Maybe there's some cookies.
Well, that was the food. There's one other reason. It was cozy. They liked the smell of the food. And
I know, so
yes?
And they like to cook here.
Well, yes, we all said that. We know that they love to cook here, but it had a great deal of light. This was one of the lightest rooms of the house because all the candles and the long fireplace. Look at the length of this hearth. A very, very long hearth. Today, I wonder if you could all help to be the Crane House children. We're going to do many things. One thing is that, first of all, we're going to test the beehive oven for Mother. Could you tell me why you think this would be called the beehive oven? Yes, Heather?
It's shaped like a beehive.
The top is shaped like a beehive, and 3 hours ago, we built a real fire in the beehive oven right in here, and we have just taken all the coals out with a peel and put it right back into the main fire. Now we're ready. Then the next step was that we took this corn broom made of broom corn, and we sloshed it around some water, and we ran from the buttery all the way into the beehive oven and swished it around to take away the scorching aspect so that we know that things wouldn't burn. Now we're all set to test the oven. Who could be the oldest girl, Elizabeth, and come forth and test the oven for Mother? What about this little girl? What is your name?
Beth.
Beth. You're now Elizabeth. Beth, Mother would tell you that if you rolled up your sleeve and held your arm in the oven for 10 counts without scorching yourself, you would be ready for something. Would you do that, please? Count. 1,
2,
louder.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Go in.
6, 7, 8, 9.
Wonderful. Is it very hot? Oh, her arm is very hot. We know that the oven is just about ready. And today we're going to put in, Elizabeth, thank you for helping Mother, the little molasses cakes. We don't call them cookies because we do everything in the 1796 manner or the 18th century manner, and they were called little cakes. Now we're going to put these in and hope that in about 10 to 12 minutes they're all going to be ready for us to eat. How many of you would love some? Wonderful! All right, now Abigail Abigail is the next girl, and here is the crane. This long iron arm is called a crane, and Abigail would have come forward and helped Mother stir the applesauce. There, we have some red hots. Yes. All right, would you like to be Abigail? Peggy, would you like to be Abigail? Step forward, please. And there is a wooden spoon. Stir the applesauce and put in some red hots, Abigail, for Mother. Mother did have time to make these red hots in the 18th century. Some of our mothers don't have time to make candy today, but Mrs. Crane would have had that time. All right, now could someone tell me, who has his thinking cap on, if Abigail thinks that this is burning, what can she do about it? Could she add more water, or could she move it in some way? Let's talk about how many things we can do with this wonderful hearth. Yes, Heather, what could she do? Peggy, do you think that you could, does it need water also? Do you think it does? No, all right. And now where is Peggy going to move it? Peggy, where would you move it? Do you wish it to be hotter, darling? All right, then good. All right, now be careful of your skirts, Abigail, and we'll bring in a trammel. See, this is an S hook because it's shaped like an S. Now we're going to put this on it so that Abigail can make her applesauce get a little warmer because it'll be lower and closer to all the wonderful fires. All right, Abigail, could you support that with Mother, and we'll put it on that hook. Thank you very much. And that's the same thing as, for instance, if you have a burner at home, you would turn it up higher. This way, we lower the pot so that it can get closer to the fire. Now, what else are we doing today?
Today we have another type of an oven that we're working with. And this is called a reflecting oven, a tin kitchen. And we're cooking a bird in it. Can you see the bird? Can you see the bird? I've been lacing it with some wine and some butter. We made our own stove a moment ago. I'll show you that in a second. See the bird right here? Over here we have a rotisserie type thing where every few minutes we turn and poke this rotisserie in another hole. That way the bird will get nice and brown. And if you've ever heard the expression done to a turn, this is where the expression came from. This tin reflecting oven also has a funny little looking spout. Has a funny looking spout. Do you know what that spout is for? Yes? No? Yeah? To empty the juices and to keep the grease. Do you know why we keep the grease all winter? We make soap out of grease, don't we? We keep all of the grease. Over here we have another wonderful little oven. This is another little roaster. This is called a lark roaster because they used to shoot larks and robins and pigeons. They'd hang them by their breasts. And they'd put this right in front of the fire, and they would have lovely brown birds for dinner.
While we're waiting for our little cakes to bake in the beehive oven, I am glazing an orange cake. And boys and girls, we only use ingredients that would have been in New Jersey in the 18th century. Today, we milked the cow and we made the butter. And what is left in the butter churn, at the bottom of the butter churn, which liquid is left after we make the butter? Melissa? No, it's not cream. We use the cream, we use the top of the cream to make the butter. What is left in the butter churn, Heather? What is it called? What is the milk called in the butter churn?
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk. Good for
Good.
you, Christopher. And we use the buttermilk as one of the ingredients in our lovely orange cake today. We have buttermilk and white raisins and all the things they had in those days. Now, we never iced cakes in the 18th century. We only glazed them. And we have a glazing tool called a salamander. This one is a peel, but we're using it as a salamander today, and we're going to bring the salamander down over the orange cake like this to sizzle it. And there it goes. If you see it very closely, you'll see it all sizzling. And it has a lovely caramel flavor. And this is what they did in those days. You see, the salamander was named by the 18th century people because it was the only animal in mythology to go through fire unharmed. It could do anything through fire and still come out being fine. Would you stand up, a few of you, to see how lovely the cake has been sizzled? All right. Now, thank you very much. And you will each have a chance to taste this cake afterwards. You see, the heat of the salamander is so intense that I don't even have to touch the cake. It goes right down and sizzles it. And there we are. Maybe you can smell that lovely caramel flavor. The glaze is made with brandy and orange juice and sugar.
We use this iron peel for another reason. We're going to make a stove. I told you before that I was making something to baste the bird with. Look, I can make the hearth have many, many stoves. Would you like to see me sizzle an egg for you?
Yeah.
All right. This has a funny name. Can anybody tell me what this is called? Yes?
It's called spider.
A spider. Yes, we have a salamander, and now we have a spider pup. We have lots of spiders. Most of our things have spider legs. Now, in just a minute, this butter will be melted, and we'll crack an egg and have a lovely, lovely fried egg.
I wonder how the molasses cakes are doing. Have everything. The other thing that we have doing on the crane, boys and girls, we have another kind of oven on the crane. This is called a Dutch oven. And if you'll see in here, we have another cake baking in the Dutch oven. Mrs. Crane would not have lit the beehive oven every day. She would only do it once a week because a great deal of wood was used, and it was a big task to light the oven. But every day she would have used the Dutch oven because we could put coals on top of this, and there are coals underneath, and that helped it to cook faster. You see, she could have done this. She put coals right on top of the Dutch oven, and that would help that cake to bake. Of course, at Thanksgiving time, Mother would have had the oven lit every day, and she would have baked 75 pies at one time, night and day, because it was holiday time.
Let's sizzle that egg. Do you think the butter is ready?
Yes.
Where's my garbage disposal? Do I have a garbage disposal?
No.
What do I do with this?
Throw it in the
Throw
fire.
it into the fire. Very good.
Isn't that fun?
I need a Matthias right now. We have
Yes.
a task. All right, Christopher, would you do me a favor, please, and take a nice piece of wood and place it way back on top of the fire. Our fire is getting rather low. Yes, please.
What would Matthias's name be today, I wonder? Yes? Matthew. Yes, some of the other things would not be changed. Abigail, maybe Elizabeth would be Betsy, but Matthias would be
Now
Matthew.
watch out because we have all our burners in the front going, don't we? Here. See more spider pins?
Yep. I see a big
Okay, walk
one.
back and place it way far back in the front.
I can see a big one.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Matthias.
It's hot.
Can you see how our egg is sizzling? Perhaps we'll put some salt on it. Would you put some salt on it for me, please?
Don't pour the whole thing.
While all the other children were helping Mother with the chores and waiting for the egg to sizzle, there would be little Mary holding the baby James. And what would she do? Look what she has to keep him occupied. It's a little tin rattle with a whistle at the end. And you know how we know that this is for baby James? It says, for a very good child. And we know that James Crane must have been a very good little baby. All right, there goes the egg.
Here it comes.
Wonderful.
Yes. Could we have a
Yes.
Thank you. Boys and girls, if you were going to have breakfast with Mrs. Crane 170 years ago, do you think you would have Pop-Tarts and Wheaties? No. What would you have? You might have eggs and cornmeal mush, perhaps ham, perhaps some bacon.
Johnny cake.
Johnny cakes. Here we have a nice big griddle cake. And tell me what this is. Does anybody know what this is? This is a toaster, you're right. We would put large slabs of bread in here, place it in front of the fire until that bread was browned, then we would turn it around like this and we'd toast the other side. So we can have that for breakfast, some toast. We also have a very funny looking contraption over here. Just a minute. I want somebody who really doesn't know too much about this to guess. Can you guess what this is? You don't put butter in it, and it's not a cake decorator. What is it, Bradford? Yes, Melissa? Sausage. This is a sausage gun. You mince all of the sausage that's left, all of the pork that's left over from roasts and chops and joints. You take everything that's left in the pig but the squeal. Isn't that a funny expression? You chop it up very fine, you put it in here. You take some of the pig's intestine, you put it across like that, and force the sausage meat into the pig's intestine. Tie it off every 3 or 4 inches. You'd have sausage links. This is how you had sausage in the old days.
Mrs. Mann, I'm going to turn the egg now, just very quickly.
I have a very, very important question to ask you. What would happen if the fire went out?
You have to make another one.
You'd have to make another one. You know, all the fire, every room in the big house has a fireplace. So if you ran out of embers down here, you might take this embers carrier. You might go upstairs to your bedroom, for instance, and see if you could get an ember or a piece of hard, roaring hot wood. Place it in here and run down and start another fire. But if it were summertime and this fireplace went out, you would not have any fire upstairs, would you? And perhaps the neighbor would be 4 or 5 miles away, so that would be a pretty hard way of doing it. Tell me another way of creating a fire. I'll give you a clue with this. Yes, Heather?
Light a candle.
No, we don't have matches to light a candle, do we?
You put it in the fireplace. Oh, you put it in the fireplace.
No. Do we have a Boy Scout here? No? Yes?
There's 2 things up there and you rub them together.
Well, that's a pretty good answer. How about some flint and steel? This is called a tinder box. This is the secret. This is the steel. This is the flint. Here we take this off, and we have some little bits of linen here. These are called tinder. Could we have one of the boys perhaps try? How about if you'll come right here and try to strike. You hold this in your right hand and this in your left, and you strike this. So you see sparks? You get those sparks to jump on the tinder and light it, and then we will swoop in with our candle and light the candle. See? Would you like to try that? Come over here.
Many times it took as long as 3 hours to to get the tinder to light. It's one thing to get sparks to fly, but what do the sparks have to do? Yes? They have to fall right on the tinder, and then we zoom right in. Little harder, darling. Hard. That's very good.
Our little cakes are ready.
There they are. Burning my fingers. Here we are.
Thank you.
And while our friend is striking the flint and steel, here is our sizzled egg that we created on the hearth with a spider. Who would like to eat this? Peggy, wonderful. Here is a 3-time fork with a musket handle you may use to eat it. You know, boys and girls, we spoke differently in the 18th century too. We would pound sugar, and what is this? What would you call this? A sifter? Well, you're almost right. Today we would sift flour, but in the 18th century we searched it. It's called a searcher. What would we be searching for? We'd do all this, search, and then whatever was left we'd go back into the fire. What would be kept in there? What are we searching for?
Flour.
What would be in there left? How about little bugs? Stone? All kinds of strange things were in their ingredients. No, we had any little stones left, we threw them right back into the fire.
This is where we keep our flour and sugar and some spices. Has a very funny name too. This is called a firkin. This is not bug tight, is it? That's why we have to search. We have some lovely pewter, what we would call today, plates. But there's another funny name for them. They're called chargers. Pewter chargers. Wooden plates, 170 years ago, would have been called wooden trenchers. We have different terms, don't we?
And the salt, boys and girls, is made of treenware. Could you say treen? Treenware. It's because it's from the tree in one piece. And usually the salt was placed right in the center of the table. If you were a special guest, you were placed above the salt. If you were not a guest, but an ordinary member of the family, you were placed below the salt. And that's where we got the expression, worth your salt, you see. And here it is. Now we also have this type of bowl, which comes in all sizes. It's a burl bowl. Did you ever walk along and see a tree with big bumps sticking out? Well, this is what they make burl bowls from. This is a maple burl bowl made of one piece of that, and it's very light. Catch. Isn't that light? And this one is a smaller one, a burl bowl, all made from one piece of wood. Also, Mother would have made a butter pat every day for the family, and she would have used a design. This one is a 4 o'clock, which is the name of a flower that was very well known 200 years ago and still is grown today, called a 4 o'clock. Why do you suppose it was called 4 o'clock? Does anyone know? Yes? I beg your pardon?
Flower, close up the flower.
Oh, just the opposite. You're awfully close. The flower would open at 4 o'clock in the afternoon if there was sunshine. And this Mother did a pat today of a 4 o'clock design.
We have some other designs here too. Some other lovely flowers. You see them? These are other butter molds. Here's another lovely wooden piece. This is called a noggin. This is a wooden pitcher. Have you ever heard the expression, don't bump your noggin?
Yeah.
Perhaps this is where it came from. It means don't spill your milk or don't bump your noggin.
Boys and girls, today you have seen an 18th century kitchen. You told me why you thought the Crane children loved to come here, but is this like your own kitchen?
No.
How is it different? Let's play detective. There are 3 things missing in this kitchen that your kitchen has today. Could you name one thing that's missing, please? Yes?
A drawer.
Excuse me?
A drawer.
A drawer? Well, I think you're right. There is no drawer here.
Yes,
but
we have a drawer in this
there
table.
it is.
Yeah.
There is a drawer. These are very important things in your kitchen. 3 very important things. Yes? A sink and water. Where do you suppose our sink and our water is? What would, yes? From a well or something else, yes?
From the pond.
Well, the pond was used not for fresh water, but for something else that's missing in a few moments. What else did we use for water? Yes, Heather? Not the well alone, yes? The spring. And the spring would trickle down over the mountain. This was called First Mountain, Montclair was. And it came down over the mountain, and it came right into that cold room called the butt tree, and trickled down through kind of an open type of pipe. Now, that's the sink. What else is missing? Who could tell me? Who has? Yes, this girl. What else is missing? Yes? Well, a dishwasher is missing, but that is not a necessity, I'm afraid. Yes, Heather?
Electricity.
Electricity is also not a necessity right now, but you're right, Heather. That's why many things were done during the day, and the main meal was eaten at 2 o'clock, because they had to eat and do all their other chores during light time. Yes, Melissa? A refrigerator. Now, Christopher, what did they do for a refrigerator?
They went down to the ice house, and in the winter they cut out these big blocks of ice and bring them to the ice house to store them.
From the pond. And what would they store them in? What do you think they put in between to save that ice all year round? Yes?
Maybe hams or
Sawdust and straw would keep them cool and so forth. Now that's, the sink is missing, the refrigerator is missing, and one more thing. Come on. Yes, a stove. And what do we have instead of a stove? We have a fireplace, we have a beehive oven, we have a tin kitchen, we have a Dutch oven. We have so many things. In fact, this is very versatile, isn't it? What does versatile mean? What does versatile mean? Yes? Many different things can be done in our old kitchen. And we're all ready now to have you sample an 18th century sweet. These are little molasses cakes. I don't hear you, Magic Fingers. You're welcome. Thank you. These are made of molasses that came from the West Indies. Beautiful raisins. And we didn't use any leavening agents. We just had saleratus or baking soda. We never used anything like baking powder. Oh, excuse me, Melissa, would you share your little cake with Peggy? And here is our Dutch oven cake that we took out of here. Let's try to undo it and see what happens. This is pumpkin bread. There we are. All right.
Boys and girls, what are these? I'm sure you all can tell. What? They're candle molds, right. This is a strung candle mold. Somebody has strung it already. Pieces of strings, the length of this, and then tied them off. And this looks as if it's been poured. Can you see? We have actually 6 candles. And how do you suppose we get those out? How about if we crack them? You're right. If we hit them real hard, we'll get some candles. There's another technique of making candles too, and up here we see some dipped candles. Mrs. Crane would have done her candle making just once a year. It was a very long process, and it was smelly and oily and dusty and greasy. She would have done it just once a year, perhaps in the fall or in the spring. And she would have made thousands of candles to last them the whole year.
Boys and girls, do you remember the story of Peter Rabbit? And that Peter Rabbit, because he was naughty, had to drink a particular kind of tea. Do you remember what that tea was? Yes?
Chamomile or
Oh, you're on the right track. Not chamomile. Yes?
chamomile.
Chamomile tea. what do you think chamomile is? Does anyone know what kind of plant it is? It's an herb. And Mrs. Crane, Fanny Pearson Crane, was the daughter of a doctor, and she loved to work with herbs. There was only one doctor for 600 people, boys and girls, and many people came to her for feverfew. Why do you suppose they would come for feverfew? What would feverfew do? What would it do? What does it say that it's doing? Feverfew. Yes? You're very good. You're on the right track. This lovely girl said it would prevent fever. If you had fever, it would reduce the fever. And Mrs. Crane would make a tea and make her feverfew tea, and it would create a sweat in your body, and then you would shake off all the fever. And here is chamomile. Here is that little chamomile that was made into tea for naughty Peter Rabbit. And we have so many other herbs here to cook with. In using a sausage gun, we would always put sage in our stuffing, and that was always very popular. And here's lemon balm and angelica and dill, and here is bergamot that was used for tea. And look at these strange things up here. That is dried mushrooms. You see, in the fall, when we had a lovely harvest, the room would be filled with pumpkins and apples and potatoes. But what would we do with them if we hadn't eaten all the harvest? Where would we store everything? Where would we store the extra potatoes and all the roots? Does anyone know? Yes? Well, you're close. It was called a root cellar. And the things that were left over, we would dry right up on the hearth and put these in water afterwards, and they'd puff out, and we'd use them again. That's how we made the pumpkin bread today, from dried pumpkin rings. And this was the first comb. It's called a teasel. It teased your hair, and they still use these in some factories in New England today. And this is just an artemisia that we were drying to make wreaths, Christmas wreaths with.
Can any of you tell me what this might be? This is another dried vegetable. Yes, it's a green bean. How about this one? That gives it away with some of the color. Yes? Pepper. Very good. Very good. Pepper. You know, that's what we use today when we have dehydrated food. That's what we call dehydrated food. Lots of campers take that with them. All they have to do is add water and they have wonderful food again.
Look at this strange thing. I just wound it up. It's clicking one way clockwise and then counterclockwise. Does anyone know the name? Peggy?
I don't know the name of it, but I know what it's used.
Yes, what is it?
You put stakes.
Yes, you hang a joint of meat. You would hang it right here. If we were not using the tin kitchen, you would hang it right here, and from the bottom you would hang a beautiful joint of beef or pork or anything that you'd want to braise and sizzle beautifully. And it would turn this way on string, and watch, click. And now it's going counterclockwise. Here we go. And we would always have a drip pan underneath to catch the drips, but it would be quite succulent and good.
Can any of you tell me what this might be? Yeah, they're sugar cutters. Mrs. Crane would have had a few hours of leisure time each week, and she would have taken her beautiful white sugar cone that came from the Caribbean that was also wrapped in blue paper. The blue paper was used for dyeing, and perhaps she could have woven some linen, and perhaps Mr. Crane would have had an indigo blue shirt. And the blue was very rare because it only came on the sugar cone. Mrs. Crane would have used these wonderful little cutters, and she would have cut intricate shapes for her tea parties. Here's a wonderful implement. Before we said you use everything in the pig but the squeal. Do you understand that? You use everything in the pig but the squeal, the oink. This is called a hog scraper.
Weak.
It's very, very sharp right here. After the pig had been butchered, they would lay the carcass down and start scraping the back of the pig. when they did that, they would get bristles. What would the bristles have been used for? Yeah? Not clothing. Yeah. Brushes, paint brushes would have been used with this.
This is our pumpkin bread, boys and girls. That was made with dried pumpkins, white raisins, lovely walnuts, and it was done in our Dutch oven.
True. We have another interesting object. You want to take that and pass it for me? And I'm sure many of you have seen this today in your drugstore. Do you know what this is called? A crusher. It is a crusher, but what else is it called? It has two names. A mortar and pestle. You're right. That's how we would have crushed some herbs or crushed sugars. What kind of sugars did we have besides the very expensive white sugar from the Caribbean? What other kind of sugar? What are we eating here? Your little cakes. Brown
Yes.
sugar. Good for you. And what else? Honey. Lots of honey. What did the Indians make up north? How about maple sugar? We also had beet sugar. And we had one other. Ah, yes, southern. Molasses. Molasses. Very few recipes were made with white sugar because it was so dear.
Boys and girls, many children say, well, how do you know how long to keep the little cakes in the oven? Because many of your ovens have little peekaboo doors, don't you? Or your mother has a timer. And most recipes today, or as we say, receipts in those days, have no time at all. Yours say 30 minutes or 40 minutes, but according to how hot the oven is, we don't know. So what is this called? Do you know what this is called? You see the sand coming down? Yes?
It's sort of a clock.
What is it called, Heather?
An hourglass.
An hourglass. Now, we didn't use this today for our little cakes, but many people in the olden days did something that I thought was fun. They would sing a certain amount of verses. For instance, if for molasses cakes, they would know that you had to sing about 5 or 6 verses of hymn number 87. And then when you were through with hymn number 87, 5 verses, it was time to check the molasses cakes. But the hourglass is from England because you know the cranes came from England long, long ago originally. The people in Upper Montclair were Dutch. That was called Speartown. But Cranetown, or this section of Montclair, was English. And this hourglass came from England long ago.
Do you know what Caldwell was called? It has a funny old name. Horse's neck. That was Caldwell. Yes, and Cranetown was Montclair, right?
Shall we wind up? Boys and girls, thank you very much for coming to be with us today in the 1800 kitchen, which was approximately 175 years old. I hope that you enjoyed meeting the Crane House children and being the Crane House children today. I wonder, as you walk out munching your pumpkin bread and your little molasses cakes, if you boys who are going out to play baseball now, I wonder if you'll think of Matthias and James and think of them going out with their whip, twisting their whip with their whiplash, or playing cricket. Perhaps you could. And you girls who are going home now to dress your Barbie dolls, perhaps, I wonder if you'll remember Elizabeth and Abigail and little baby Mary as they play with their corn husk doll or their wooden doll, or if they were fortunate enough to have a bisque or a French china doll. I hope you know that they'll be whispering little secrets to their dolls as you will do yours tonight. I hope so. Goodbye.